The massive chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Tamine stepped forward to the speaking platform. His dark eyes swept across the assembled delegates representing 247 species from across known space. The crystalline beings of Vorix Prime leaned forward with interest. The massive insectoid thrall delegates clicked their mandibles in anticipation. Even the floating energy forms of the Kelver Collective dimmed their usual glow to pay attention. Tamine adjusted his formal diplomatic coat and placed a data tablet on the podium. When he spoke, his voice was calm and professional, carrying no hint of emotion. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, honored delegates, I come before you today to deliver a formal statement from the United Earth Government and all human colonies. He paused and looked directly at the council speaker, a towering being covered in smooth blue scales. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all galactic affairs. We are terminating our membership in the Galactic Council. All diplomatic relations are hereby severed. All trade agreements are cancelled. All military cooperation is ended. All cultural exchange programs are concluded. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Delegates turned to one another, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. The council speaker raised 3 of his 6 arms for silence. Ambassador Tamine, this is highly irregular. Can you provide an explanation for this sudden decision? Tamine's expression remained neutral. We cite irreconcilable differences in values and mutual respect. No further explanation will be provided at this time. All human personnel will evacuate from non-human territories within 72 hours. We expect the same courtesy for non-human personnel in human space. They will not be harmed, but they must leave. With that, Tamine gathered his tablet and walked out of the chamber. His aide, Ambassador Hyojin, followed close behind. The council chamber descended into chaos as delegates shouted questions at their retreating backs. Within the hour, the evacuation began. On the trade station orbiting Melbourne Prime, human merchants began closing their shops. They were polite but firm, refusing to answer questions about why they were leaving. Parents pulled their children from alien schools. Researchers abandoned long-term projects. Diplomats sealed their embassies and destroyed sensitive documents. On the mining colony of Thrall 9, human workers powered down their equipment and boarded transport ships. The Thrall overseers demanded explanations, but the humans simply shook their heads and continued packing. Some Thrall workers who had become friends with the humans tried to convince them to stay, but the humans would only say that they had no choice. The most dramatic evacuation happened at the joint military station defending the Kelver Nebula. Human soldiers and officers gathered their weapons and personal belongings. Admiral Bauman, commander of the human fleet stationed there, met with his alien counterparts one final time. "This makes no sense," said Commander Vrel of the Vorix forces. "We fought side by side during the Void incursion. Your people saved my life twice. Why are you leaving?" Bauman's jaw tightened. "I wish I could tell you, old friend. But my orders are clear. I'm sorry." The alien commander watched helplessly as human ships undocked from the station and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Within 2 days, every human presence in alien space had vanished. Back on Earth and the human colonies, the mood was somber. Hyojin stood in the war room of the United Earth Government headquarters, surrounded by screens showing the evacuation progress. President Yuna entered the room, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Is everyone accounted for?" she asked. Hyojin nodded. "The last transport just cleared Thrall space. We got everyone out. All 23,000 citizens are safe. And the evidence? Secured and backed up across multiple locations. When the time comes, we'll have everything we need." President Yuna walked to the large window overlooking the capital city. 30 years. We spent 30 years building relationships with them. We shared our music, our art, our technology. We fought their wars. We mourned their dead as our own. Her voice cracked slightly. And, they did this to us. Hyojin moved to stand beside her. The people are asking questions. They want to know why we left the council. How long can we maintain operational security? As long as necessary. If we reveal what happened too soon, some council species might destroy the evidence. Others might prepare defenses against our response. No, we stay silent. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. The chamber buzzed with theories and speculation. The Thrall delegate, a warrior caste member named Krell, stood to address the assembly. This is clearly an emotional overreaction from a young species. Humans have always been unstable, prone to dramatic gestures. I propose we ignore this tantrum and continue our business. They will come crawling back when they realize they need us more than we need them. Several delegates nodded in agreement, but others looked uncertain. The Vorix collective representative, Councillor Deho, rose slowly. His ancient form shimmered with barely contained anger. You speak of things you do not understand, Krell. I have observed humans for 3 decades. They are many things, but impulsive is not one of them. Every action they take is calculated. If they have withdrawn so completely and so quickly, they have a reason. A very serious reason. The Melbourne delegate, whose species lived in vast underwater cities, added her concerns. Our economy is already suffering. Human technology powered 40% of our desalination systems. Human traders were our primary source of rare minerals. This is not a minor inconvenience. The council speaker called for order. We must attempt to re-establish communication. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. For the next week, the council sent dozens of messages to human space. Every single one went unanswered. When council ships approached human borders, they were met by massive warship patrols. The human vessels did not fire, but they made their message clear. Any ship that crossed into human territory would be destroyed without warning. Hyojin reviewed the border reports in her office. Her second-in-command, Director Jaiwan, sat across from her. They're getting nervous, Jaiwan observed. 3 more council species have tried to make contact through back channels. All refused. Hyojin allowed herself a small, cold smile. Good. Let them feel what it's like to be ignored. Let them experience what it means to have people they trusted turn their backs. When do we tell them the truth? When the time is right. When we've gathered more evidence. When we're absolutely certain that every piece of the puzzle is in place. Hyojin stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. They took our people. They experimented on them. They tortured them. And they thought we would never find out. She turned back to Jaiwan, her eyes hard as steel. We will make them understand. But, first, we make them afraid. Fear brings honesty. Fear brings truth. And, fear will bring justice. In the darkness of space, human fleets continued their patrols. Silent. Watchful. Waiting. 2 weeks had passed since humanity's sudden departure from the Galactic Council. The confusion and speculation continued to grow with each passing day. Trade routes that had been stable for decades now struggled to function. Scientific collaborations ground to a halt. Military defense networks showed dangerous gaps where human forces once stood guard. The Galactic Council chamber was in the middle of another emergency session when the doors burst open. A Vorix security officer rushed in, his crystalline form flickering with urgency. He whispered something to Council Speaker Narek, whose blue scales immediately darkened to a deep purple indicating extreme distress. This session is temporarily suspended, Narek announced, his voice shaking. Senior Council members, please report to the secure briefing room immediately. 20 minutes later, 15 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in a sealed chamber, watching a holographic display with growing horror. Intelligence Director Miran of the Kelver Collective floated at the center of the room, her energy form pulsing with agitation. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected a debris field near the edge of human territory. We sent a recovery team to investigate. She paused, her form dimming. What they found was a Thrall espionage vessel. It had been destroyed, but not before the humans recovered its data cores. Counselor Krell, the Thrall delegate, stood abruptly. This is outrageous. The Thrall Hive does not engage in espionage against Council members. This must be a rogue element. Sit down, Counselor Deho said quietly, his ancient voice carrying absolute authority. And, listen. Miran continued. Our team managed to retrieve partial data from the wreckage. What we found. She struggled to continue. What we found were logs. Detailed logs of operations conducted in human space over the past 5 years. The holographic display changed, showing document after document. Flight plans. Targeting data. Abduction schedules. The senior council members watched in silence as the evidence mounted. The vessel was conducting systematic abductions of human civilians from remote colonies and isolated space stations. The logs show 147 separate incidents. Conservative estimates suggest at least 3,000 human subjects were taken. Counselor Sunhee from the aquatic Melbourne species made a sound of distress. Taken where? For what purpose? Miran's form flickered. That's where it gets worse. The logs reference delivery points. 7 different species. All council members. She displayed a list of names that made several delegates gasp. The humans were being delivered to research facilities operated by these species. Research? Asked Counselor Jihun of the plant-based Verdant Collective. What kind of research requires abducting sentient beings? Military and medical experimentation, Miran answered flatly. The Thrall wanted to understand human pain tolerance and combat stress responses. The Kelver Collective was studying human neural plasticity and learning capabilities. The Melbourne were examining human adaptation to extreme environments. Shall I continue? The room erupted in shouted denials and accusations. Some delegates claimed ignorance. Others insisted it must be a fabrication. A few sat in stunned silence. Counselor Deho rose to his full height, his crystalline body glowing with fury. Enough. I have heard enough lies and excuses. 5 years ago, several of you approached me with proposals for enhanced research into human capabilities. I refused to support these programs. I argued that such research was unethical and dangerous. I was told my concerns were noted and the proposals were shelved. He pointed at the list of names on the display. Clearly, I was lied to. You proceeded without full council approval. You abducted citizens of a council member species. You conducted experiments on sentient beings without consent. And you thought there would be no consequences. Counselor Krell's mandibles clicked nervously. The humans are a resilient species. The research was conducted to better understand their abilities, which could benefit all council species during future conflicts. The subjects were well cared for. Well cared for. A new voice entered the conversation. Counselor Yunji of the energy-based Luminar had been silent until now. Her form brightened to an almost blinding intensity. I have just received additional intelligence from my people. We hacked into human communication networks before they closed their borders. We intercepted medical reports from their rescue operations. She activated another holographic display. Medical scans appeared, showing human bodies ravaged by experimentation. Surgical scars. Neural implants. Signs of extreme physical and psychological trauma. One image showed a young human female, her body covered in test markings and injection sites. This girl's name was Hannah. She was 15 years old when she was taken from a farming colony. The thrall held her for 2 years, testing her ability to withstand different types of pain and stress. When the humans finally found her, she could no longer speak. She had forgotten how. The room fell silent. Even those who had supported the program seemed shaken by the visual evidence. Counselor Deho spoke again, his voice heavy with disgust. Now we understand. The humans discovered what we were doing. They found the evidence. And they chose not to expose us publicly. Instead, they simply left. They gathered their people and walked away from 3 decades of friendship and cooperation because they could no longer trust us. Perhaps we can negotiate, suggested Counselor Miho of the silicon-based Krent species. If we return the subjects, offer compensation, formally apologize, you think an apology will fix this? Deho's laugh was bitter. The humans trusted us. They fought beside us during the Void incursion. They lost 60,000 soldiers protecting Council worlds from an existential threat. And, while they were bleeding for us, we were abducting their civilians and cutting them open to see what made them special. He turned to address the full assembly. I have studied human history. It is a long tale of conflicts, betrayals, and wars. But there are patterns. Humans do not forgive easily when their trust is violated. They do not forget when their people are harmed. And they do not respond to betrayal with weakness. Are you suggesting they might attack us? Asked Ji-hun. I am suggesting that we have created an enemy where we once had an ally. And humans make very, very dangerous enemies. The council chamber descended into chaos once again. Accusations flew between the guilty parties and those who had been kept ignorant. The Melbourne delegate tried to defend her species' actions by claiming the research had medical benefits. The Kelva representative insisted that no permanent harm had been intended. Speaker Narek called for order repeatedly, his scales shifting through colors indicating extreme stress. Finally, he managed to quiet the assembly. We must decide on a course of action. Do we attempt to make contact with the humans? Do we prepare a formal apology? Do we offer reparations? Counselor Yunji's form pulsed with anger. Before we decide anything, we need to acknowledge the full scope of what was done. According to the data I accessed, the humans have already located and rescued 2,347 of their people from various facilities. But the abduction logs suggest over 3,000 were taken. That means there are still hundreds missing. Missing or dead, Deho added quietly. The mortality rate in these facilities was approximately 30% according to the partial logs we recovered. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a physical presence. 900 humans dead. Hundreds more still missing. Thousands traumatized and tortured in the name of scientific progress. We need to send an envoy, Speaker Narek decided. Someone the humans might trust. Someone who can begin the process of reconciliation. There is no one, Deho said flatly. We have burned every bridge. Violated every principle of the Council's founding charter. Betrayed people who considered us friends. The humans will not listen to words. They will only respond to actions. He looked at each council member in turn. We must dismantle every research program. We must locate and return every missing human. We must prosecute those responsible, including council members if necessary. We must prove through our actions that we understand the gravity of what was done. Only then, might they consider listening to us. And, if they don't, asked Krell. Deho's expression was grim. Then, we will face the consequences of our choices. And, I suspect those consequences will be severe. In human space, President Yuna reviewed the same intelligence reports. Her security chief, Director Jaiwan, stood nearby. They know, Jaiwan reported. The council has discovered what they did. Yuna nodded slowly. Good. Now they can begin to understand the weight of their crimes. But, understanding is not enough. Not nearly enough. She looked at the images of the rescued survivors, her hands clenching into fists. Prepare the next phase. It's time to show them what happens when you betray humanity. The Galactic Council's attempts to contact humanity had become desperate. Over 40 formal messages had been sent through every available channel. Each one went unanswered. The silence from human space was absolute and terrifying. Ambassador Hyojin sat in her office on Earth, deleting yet another plea for dialogue from the Council. Her assistant, Jaiwan, entered with the latest border reports. 3 more incidents today, Jaiwan reported. A Melbourne science vessel strayed too close to the border near Titan Station. Our patrol ships locked weapons on them. They retreated immediately. Good. What else? The Kelver Collective tried to send an automated probe into our space with a recorded message. Our defense grid destroyed it before it crossed the border. Hyojin nodded with satisfaction. They need to learn that our borders are not suggestions. Any violation will be met with immediate force. Across the galaxy, the economic impact of humanity's withdrawal was becoming catastrophic. On Melbourne Prime, the capital city faced its worst water crisis in centuries. The desalination systems that purified water for 2 billion citizens had been designed with human technology. Without human engineers to maintain them, the systems were failing. Governor Taejin of Melbourne Prime addressed his people through a planetary broadcast. We are implementing emergency water rationing. All citizens are limited to 50 liters per day. We are working with our own engineers to restore full functionality, but it will take time. What he didn't mention was that their own engineers estimated it would take 3 years to develop replacement technology. 3 years of rationing, economic hardship, and social unrest. The Thrall Hive faced different problems. Human traders had been the primary source of rare minerals essential for their biotechnology. Without these materials, their ability to produce new warriors and workers was severely limited. The Hive Queen called an emergency meeting of her generals. How long can we maintain current operations without human trade, she demanded. General Ryung, head of logistics, bowed deeply. 6 months at current consumption rates, my queen. After that, we will be forced to reduce warrior production by 70%. Our expansion programs will halt entirely. The queen's mandibles clicked in frustration. This is unacceptable. We must find alternative sources. We have tried, my queen. The humans controlled access to the richest mining sites in the outer sectors. Other species are unwilling or unable to fill the gap in supply. Meanwhile, medical research across the galaxy ground to a halt. Human pharmaceutical companies had been developing treatments for dozens of alien diseases. Their research centers were now closed, their data encrypted and inaccessible. Thousands of patients with rare conditions faced uncertain futures as their treatment programs were suspended. Dr. Minji of the Verdant Collective stood in her empty laboratory, looking at the sealed containers that had held human-designed gene therapy treatments. Her patient, a young verdant child dying of a degenerative condition, had only months to live. The humans had been developing a cure. Now that research was gone. She composed a desperate message to her former human colleagues, begging them to release the research data. Like all the others, her message went unanswered. But, the most alarming reports came from military intelligence. Human fleet movements suggested something far more sinister than a simple withdrawal. Defense stations along human borders had tripled in number. Massive shipyards were operating at full capacity, producing vessels of unknown design. Councillor Miho of the Krent species presented his findings to the council. Our observations show that humanity is engaged in the largest military buildup in their history. Warship construction has increased by 400%. They're developing new weapons systems that our analysts cannot identify. Are they preparing to attack us? Asked Counselor Jihun nervously. Miho's silicon form shifted, indicating uncertainty. We don't know. The weapons don't match any known offensive systems in our databases. They appear to be specifically designed to counter Council species' natural advantages. Counselor Deho studied the tactical displays with a growing sense of dread. Show me the weapon specifications again. Miho highlighted several designs. This one generates a sonic frequency that disrupts Thrall neural communication. This one creates electromagnetic pulses specifically tuned to interfere with Kelvor energy forms. This one produces a chemical compound highly toxic to Melbourne respiratory systems but harmless to most other species. They're building species-specific weapons, Deho said quietly. They're preparing to fight each of us using our own weaknesses against us. The realization sent a wave of fear through the council chamber. The humans weren't just angry. They were planning. Calculating. Preparing for a conflict with surgical precision. Counselor Krell stood abruptly. This proves they are a threat. We should strike first, before they complete their preparations. A coordinated assault could what? Deho interrupted. Destroy us all. Have you learned nothing? The humans fought the Void incursion with outdated equipment and sheer determination. They held the line when our forces broke and ran. Now they have modern technology, advanced weapons, and, most importantly, a reason to fight. He pointed at the tactical displays. Every strategic analysis we've run shows the same result. A war with humanity would be devastating for both sides. But, we would lose. And, we would deserve to lose. Speaker Narek called for calm. There must be another way. We need to reach them somehow. I have an idea, said Counselor Yunji. Her energy form pulsed with nervous light. The humans had friends among us. Species who opposed the experimentation programs. Perhaps if we send a delegation of only those who were innocent, they might listen. It was a desperate plan, but the council had few options. A small delegation was assembled. Counselor Deho agreed to lead it, along with Yunji, Miho, and representatives from 3 other species who could prove they had no involvement in the abductions. Their ship approached the human border slowly, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. Human patrol vessels surrounded them immediately, weapons armed but not firing. Deho sent a direct communication. This is Counselor Deho of the Vorix Collective. I am here with a small delegation of council members who had no part in the crimes committed against your people. We request permission to speak with your leadership. We do not ask for forgiveness. We ask only for the chance to be heard. For 3 hours, there was no response. The delegation waited in tense silence, wondering if they would be destroyed or simply turned away. Finally, a message came through. It was from Ambassador Hyojin. Counselor Deho, your opposition to the experimentation programs is noted and appreciated. However, individual innocence does not absolve the Council as a whole. Return to your space. If we wish to speak with you, we will make contact. Do not approach our borders again. The transmission ended. The delegation had no choice but to retreat. Back on Earth, President Yuna met with her war council. The room was filled with military leaders, intelligence officials, and senior diplomats. The council is beginning to panic, reported Admiral Baumann. Their economies are failing. Their military readiness is declining. They're desperate to restore contact. Let them panic, Yuna said coldly. They had 5 years to feel guilty about what they were doing. They had countless opportunities to stop the abductions, to treat our people with dignity. They chose profit and curiosity over morality. General Kyung-soo, head of Earth Defense Forces, brought up a tactical map. Our military preparations are ahead of schedule. We'll have full deployment capability in 2 months. Are we really going to war? Asked Director Jiwon. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. That depends on them. If they show true remorse, if they take real action to make amends, if they dismantle their research programs and return every single one of our people. She trailed off. Then, perhaps we can find a path forward. And, if they don't? Hyojin asked. President Yuna's expression hardened. Then, they will learn what it means to make an enemy of humanity. We will not conquer them. We will not become the monsters they were. But, we will ensure they never forget the price of their crimes. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council faced its greatest crisis in 1,000 years. Species that had cooperated for millennia now blamed each other for the catastrophe. The guilty parties tried to minimize their involvement. The innocent demanded justice and accountability. And, in the darkness of space, human warships continued their silent vigil. Waiting. Watching. Preparing for whatever came next. The galaxy held its breath, wondering if war could be avoided or if humanity's anger would burn everything to ashes. 3 months after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council was dying. Not from external attack, but from internal collapse. The unity that had held 247 species together for over a millennium was fracturing under the weight of guilt, fear, and desperation. On Verdant Prime, massive protests filled the streets of the capital. Thousands of plant-based beings waved banners demanding answers from their government. Dr. Minji stood at the center of one protest, her voice amplified through organic speakers. Our leaders told us the research was ethical. They told us the humans consented. They lied to us. The crowd roared in agreement. Children are dying because the treatments we need are locked away in human space. And, why? Because our government participated in torture. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. Citizens who had believed in the Council's mission of peaceful cooperation now felt betrayed by their own leaders. The truth about the experimentation programs had started to leak through unofficial channels, and public outrage was reaching critical levels. In the council chamber, the debate had become vicious. Counselor Ji-young of the empathic serene species stood at the center of the floor, her emotions broadcasting to everyone in the room. We can no longer hide from what was done, she declared. I am releasing the full evidence to all our populations. Every document. Every log. Every image of what our people did to innocent humans. The chamber erupted in chaos. Counselor Krell lunged toward her. You cannot do this. It will destroy the council. The council destroyed itself when it allowed this to happen. Ji-young's emotional projection hit everyone like a wave, forcing them to feel the horror and disgust she felt. I will not be part of this cover-up anymore. Counselor Daeho supported her decision. She is right. Transparency is our only path forward. If we continue to hide the truth, we will lose what little credibility we have left. Speaker Narek tried to restore order, but his authority had weakened considerably. Several species had already withdrawn their delegates in protest. Others were openly calling for his resignation. That evening, Counselor Ji-young made good on her promise. She released a comprehensive data package to every major news network across the galaxy. The evidence was undeniable and horrifying. Within hours, billions of citizens across hundreds of worlds were seeing the truth for the first time. The images of tortured humans spread like wildfire. Medical reports detailing the experiments. Audio logs of screams during painful procedures. Video footage of terrified human children being taken from their families. And, most damning of all, communications between council members discussing the programs as if they were routine business. One particular image became a symbol of the atrocity. A young human woman named Yuri, barely 20 years old, sitting in a medical restraint chair. Her body was covered in neural monitoring equipment. Her eyes were empty, broken by months of psychological testing. The caption explained that she had been taken from a farming colony while tending to crops. She had been held for 18 months. When rescued, she could no longer recognize her own parents. Public opinion turned violently against the governments involved. On Melbourne Prime, Governor Tajin faced calls for his immediate removal. His own cabinet members resigned in protest. Mass demonstrations shut down the capital for 5 days straight. The Thrall Hive Queen faced an even worse crisis. Her own warrior caste, known for absolute loyalty, began to question her judgment. General Ryung openly challenged her in the command chamber. "My queen, the humans fought beside us during the Void War. They saved my battalion when we were surrounded. And, while they were bleeding for us, we were taking their people in the night like cowards. This is not honorable. This is not the Thrall way." The queen's mandibles clicked furiously. "You dare question my decisions? I question decisions that bring shame to our hive. The humans will never forgive this. And, they shouldn't. It was unprecedented. No general had ever challenged the Hive Queen so directly. But, Ryung's words reflected what many in the warrior caste were thinking. The Thrall prided themselves on honor in combat. The abduction program was the opposite of everything they claimed to believe. As the galaxy burned with controversy, humanity broke its 3-month silence. Every communication network, every news broadcast, every public display across known space suddenly showed the same image. A human in military uniform standing at attention. Captain Su-bin, commander of the dreadnought Indomitable Will, looked directly into the camera. Her voice was calm but, her eyes were hard as steel. "People of the galaxy, I am Captain Su-bin of the United Earth Defense Forces. For 3 months, we have remained silent while you debated and argued among yourselves. Now it is time for you to hear from us." The broadcast showed footage of human rescue operations. Teams breaking into hidden research facilities. Finding humans in various states of physical and mental trauma. Medical personnel treating injuries that should never have existed. For 5 years, 7 species of the Galactic Council conducted illegal experiments on human subjects. They abducted over 3,000 of our people. They tortured them. They broke them. They killed 947 of our brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters. The screen showed a list of names. All 947 who had died in captivity. The list scrolled slowly, each name displayed for several seconds. The sheer length of the list was devastating. We came to the Galactic Council in peace. We shared our culture, our technology, our knowledge. We fought your wars. During the Void Incursion, 60,000 humans died protecting Council worlds. We bled for you. We died for you. And you repaid us with betrayal. Captain Subin's expression hardened further. We have documented every crime. Every abduction. Every experiment. Every death. The evidence is irrefutable. And we are releasing it all. The broadcast shifted to show detailed documentation. Flight logs showing Thrall vessels conducting abduction operations. Research notes from Melbourne scientists discussing their experiments. Financial records showing Council funds being diverted to the programs. Communications between high-ranking officials approving the abductions. You want to know why we left? Su-bin continued. Because we could not stand beside people who saw us as test subjects rather than equals. Because we could not trust species who would kidnap our people and cut them open out of curiosity. She paused, letting her words sink in. Some of you are innocent. Some of you opposed these programs. To you, we say thank you. Your voices of protest are noted and appreciated. But individual innocence does not absolve collective guilt. The broadcast showed images of the survivors. Humans with scars, both physical and psychological. Some were recovering. Others would never fully heal. These are our people. This is what was done to them in the name of scientific progress. In the name of understanding. In the name of galactic cooperation. Subin's voice grew colder. We will never forget this. We will never forgive this easily. And we will never again place ourselves at the mercy of the Galactic Council. The broadcast's final segment was the most chilling. It showed human military installations. Massive fleets. Weapon systems. The clear message was that humanity was ready for war if necessary. We do not seek conquest. We do not want to destroy you. But, we will defend ourselves with absolute force if threatened. We will protect our people with every resource at our disposal. And, we will ensure that no species ever again sees humanity as weak or expendable. Captain Subin stood at attention one final time. The Galactic Council is broken. It is corrupt. It has failed in its most basic duty to protect all its member species equally. We will not return to such an organization. If you want humanity's participation in galactic affairs, you must build something new. Something better. Something that actually lives up to its stated ideals. The broadcast ended with a simple message displayed in every known language: justice. Accountability. Reform. Or nothing. The impact was immediate and explosive. Governments across the galaxy faced revolutionary pressure from their own populations. On some worlds, leaders were forcibly removed from power. On others, entire governmental systems collapsed under the weight of scandal. The Galactic Council attempted to convene but couldn't maintain quorum. Too many species had withdrawn their delegates. Those who remained were divided into hostile factions. The guilty parties tried to defend themselves, but public opinion had turned completely against them. The Thrall Hive Queen found herself facing a rare challenge from within her own species. The Melbourne governor was arrested by his own security forces. Council members who had approved the programs went into hiding. Meanwhile, the innocent species demanded reform. Councillor Jiyoung and Councillor Deho led a movement to dissolve the old council entirely and create something new. The old system is dead, Deho announced to his supporters. It died the moment it allowed atrocities to be committed in its name. We must build a new organization. One with real accountability. One with actual enforcement of ethical standards. One that treats all species as equals, not as resources to be exploited. In her office on Earth, President Yuna watched the galaxy tear itself apart. Ambassador Hyojin stood beside her. It's working, Hyojin observed. The council is fragmenting exactly as we predicted. Yuna nodded slowly. The question now is whether they'll build something better from the ruins, or whether the galaxy will descend into chaos. And, if it's chaos, then, we'll protect ourselves and let them sort out their own mess. Yuna's expression was grim. We gave them 30 years of friendship. We gave them our trust. We gave them our blood. They repaid us with torture and lies. Whatever happens next, they brought it on themselves. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Thrall Hive Queen made a fatal mistake. Convinced that humanity's military buildup was a bluff, and, desperate to restore her authority after months of internal challenges, she ordered an attack on a human border outpost. The Thrall strike force consisted of 12 warships and 300 elite warriors. They crossed into human territory at Station Perseus 7, a small outpost with minimal defenses. The Hive Queen believed a quick, decisive victory would restore confidence in her leadership and prove that humans were not as dangerous as everyone feared. She was catastrophically wrong. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 10 minutes of the Thrall attack, alarms were sounding across every human military installation in the sector. Admiral Baumann, commanding the Earth Defense Fleet, received the alert on his flagship. Thrall forces have attacked Perseus 7, his tactical officer reported. Station is holding but requesting support. Baumann's expression was cold. Execute protocol hammer. No survivors. Across human space, warships that had been waiting in strategic positions for months suddenly jumped to faster-than-light speed. They had been planning for exactly this scenario. Every possible response had been calculated. Every target identified. Every strike timed to perfection. The Thrall attack force at Perseus 7 was destroyed within 20 minutes. Human ships appeared around them from multiple directions, cutting off all escape routes. The Thrall warriors fought bravely, but they were outmatched and surrounded. When the battle ended, every Thrall vessel was destroyed. But that was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, human strike fleets appeared across Thrall space. They didn't target civilians or population centers. Instead, they systematically dismantled every military installation the Thrall had. Shipyards were reduced to rubble. Command centers were destroyed. Communication hubs were taken offline. Weapons facilities were obliterated. The Thrall military, unprepared for such a coordinated assault, crumbled. General Ryung, who had opposed the initial attack, tried to organize a defense but quickly realized it was hopeless. The humans had been planning this for months. They knew every Thrall weakness, every defensive position, every strategic asset. The Hive Queen's command ship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Swarm, attempted to flee to a hidden backup facility. Human intelligence had known about the facility for weeks. Captain Subin's ship, the Indomitable Will, intercepted the Eternal Swarm before it could escape. Thrall vessel, this is Captain Subin. Your attack on our station was an act of war. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Hive Queen, desperate and defiant, ordered her ship to fight. The battle lasted less than an hour. The Eternal Swarm was disabled, its weapons destroyed, its engines crippled. Human boarding teams seized control of the ship and took the Hive Queen into custody. The galaxy watched in shock as the Thrall Hive, one of the most militarily powerful species in the Council, was defeated in less than 2 days. The humans didn't occupy Thrall worlds. They didn't slaughter civilians. They simply removed every piece of military infrastructure and left. But the most shocking development came next. The humans announced they would hold a trial. A real trial, with evidence and witnesses and legal procedure. The Hive Queen would be charged with war crimes against humanity. The trial was broadcast across every communication network in known space. Billions of beings watched as the once powerful Hive Queen sat in a human courtroom, facing human justice. Judge Tion presided over the proceedings with strict fairness. The prosecution presented evidence of the Thrall's participation in the abduction programs. Flight logs. Research documentation. Testimony from survivors. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The Hive Queen was given every opportunity to defend herself. She could present witnesses, challenge evidence, and speak in her own defense. Human lawyers explained every legal procedure through translators, ensuring she understood the process completely. The trial lasted 2 weeks. In the end, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. War crimes against sentient beings. Conspiracy to commit torture. Murder of captive non-combatants. Judge Tion delivered the sentence. You will serve life imprisonment. You will not be tortured. You will not be experimented upon. You will be held in a facility where your basic needs are met, but your freedom is gone. This is not revenge. This is justice. The message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity would respond to aggression with overwhelming force, but they would not become the monsters who had wronged them. They would follow their own laws and principles, even when dealing with their enemies. The Galactic Council's militant faction collapsed entirely after the Thrall defeat. No one else wanted to test humanity's military capabilities. But the economic and political chaos continued. On Melbourne Prime, the new government that had replaced the old regime took a dramatic step. They publicly released all records of their participation in the experimentation programs. They identified every official who had been involved. They arrested those responsible and put them on trial in their own courts. Governor Jae-min, who had led the reform movement that toppled the previous government, addressed his people. We cannot undo what was done. We cannot bring back those who died or heal all those who were broken. But, we can ensure it never happens again. We can hold ourselves accountable. And, we can try to rebuild trust with those we wronged. Other species began to follow Melbourne's example. The Verdant Collective, the Kelver Collective, and 3 other species involved in the programs held their own trials and prosecutions. It was painful and humiliating, but necessary. Meanwhile, Councillor Ji-young and Councillor Daeho led the effort to create something new from the ruins of the old council. They called it the Galactic Federation. Its charter was written with input from legal experts across dozens of species. The Federation's founding principles were absolute. No species would be treated as inferior to any other. No experimentation on sentient beings without informed consent. No secret programs hidden from public oversight. Complete transparency in all governmental operations. And, most importantly, real enforcement mechanisms with actual consequences for violations. The charter included something revolutionary, a Bill of Rights that applied to all sapient species. The right to bodily autonomy. The right to freedom from torture. The right to legal representation. The right to refuse participation in research. Rights that seemed obvious but had never been formally codified in galactic law. 6 months after the trial of the Hive Queen, Councillor Ji-young sent a formal communication to Earth. It was the first official contact the reform movement had attempted. President Yuna, we understand that words alone cannot repair what was broken. We understand that humanity has every right to remain separate from galactic affairs. But, we are building something new. A federation based on the principles of equality, justice, and mutual respect. We would be honored if humanity would consider joining us. Not as subjects or subordinates, but as full and equal partners. The message sat unanswered for 3 days. Then, President Yuna responded with a simple request. Send us the complete charter for review. And, send a delegation that includes survivors from the species that wronged us. We will hear what you have to say. The delegation that arrived at Earth was unlike any diplomatic mission in history. It included Councillor Ji-young, Councillor Daeho, and representatives from the reform movements. But, it also included something unprecedented. Ordinary citizens from the species that had participated in the experiments. A Thrall warrior who had lost his position for speaking out against the abductions. A Melbourne doctor who had resigned rather than participate in the research. A Kelver energy being who had risked everything to leak evidence of the programs. They brought with them the survivors. Every human who had been held captive and could travel had been located, treated, and given the choice to participate. 218 survivors chose to come, to face their former captors and hear what they had to say. The first assembly was held in New Geneva, a city built specifically to host interspecies diplomacy. Ambassador Hyojin moderated the proceedings with strict neutrality. Councillor Daeho spoke first. We cannot change the past. We cannot erase the pain we caused. We can only acknowledge it, learn from it, and try to build something better. The Galactic Federation is our attempt to ensure that what happened to your people never happens to anyone again. Then, came the survivors from the guilty species. One by one, they told their stories. The Thrall warrior spoke of his shame when he learned what his leaders had done. The Melbourne doctor described the moment she realized the research was torture and her years of fighting to stop it from within. The Kelver being shared how she had been ostracized and threatened for speaking the truth. Finally, the human survivors spoke. Yuri, the young woman whose image had become a symbol of the atrocities, stood before the assembly. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. They took 2 years of my life. They took my peace of mind. They took my ability to trust easily. But they didn't take my humanity. She looked at the alien delegates. I don't know if I can forgive what was done to me. But I can acknowledge that not all of you were responsible. Some of you tried to stop it. Some of you are here because you want to make things right. She took a breath. If you're serious about building something better, if you're serious about making sure this never happens again, then I think we should at least listen. Because if we don't try to build something together, we're just ensuring the next cycle of violence. The proceedings continued for 2 weeks. Every aspect of the Federation Charter was debated. Humans demanded stronger protections, stricter oversight, and real consequences for violations. The alien delegates largely agreed, having seen the cost of the old system's failures. On the final day, Councillor Wunchik was given the honor of addressing the assembly. He was a philosopher and former prisoner, one of the earliest humans to be abducted. His time in captivity had left visible scars on his body, but his mind remained sharp. Trust is a fragile thing, he began. Once broken, it can never be fully restored. My people learned that lesson painfully. We trusted the Galactic Council, and that trust was betrayed in the worst possible way. He gestured to the assembled delegates. But isolation is not the answer. Revenge is not the answer. Building walls and never speaking to each other again, that's not the answer either. The answer is accountability. The answer is justice. The answer is building a system so strong and so transparent that such betrayals become impossible. Wunchik's gaze swept across the humans and aliens alike. The Galactic Federation you propose is a good start. It has strong protections and real enforcement. But it's not enough. It will never be enough unless we, all of us, commit to holding each other accountable. Not just in law, but in practice. Not just in public, but in private. Every day, in every decision, we must choose to uphold these principles. He paused, his expression softening slightly. We came to you in friendship 30 years ago. That friendship was betrayed. But, perhaps, with time and effort and absolute commitment to these new principles, we can build something stronger than friendship. We can build genuine partnership. Equals working together, protecting each other, respecting each other. The chamber was silent as Wunchik concluded. The choice is yours. If you want us back, you must prove you've learned what it means to be truly civilized. Not through words, but through actions. Show us the Federation can work. Show us that justice matters more than convenience. Show us that sapient rights are not negotiable. Do that, and we will consider joining you. The vote came 3 days later. Earth's government agreed to join the Galactic Federation, but with conditions. Humanity would have veto power over any military actions. Human observers would be embedded in every Federation agency to ensure compliance with the Charter. And, most importantly, humanity would maintain the right to withdraw again if the Federation ever failed to uphold its principles. The galaxy had changed forever. The old council was dead. In its place stood something new, built on the ashes of betrayal and the hope for redemption. Whether it would succeed remained to be seen. But, for the first time in months, there was hope. And, in the darkness of space, human worship stood ready. Not as conquerors or destroyers, but, as guardians. Watching. Waiting. Ensuring that the lessons learned in blood and pain would never be forgotten.